Yeah, I'll get with you. Okay, thank you.
Call the meeting to order. And at this time, I would recognize Councilman Schmidt for the invocation, and then that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I would ask that we observe a moment of silence to reflect on the decisions made here tonight. Thank you.
And we do have proclamations tonight, so. Come down.
They had the surgery, had the medical procedure on Friday. I'm not sure exactly, but he's in a hip brace. And he was in a lot of pain, and he's not. Texted him. He's gonna try and be
The
here.
first one is dealing with Red Cross, so if Mr. Cook would join us up here, or join me up here on the stage.
I'm doing all right.
All right. So I have this
No, just
proclamation.
all the running,
I'm
I'm
gonna go
just
ahead and
not
read
quite
it.
up to it yet, so.
He's still recovering.
Yeah, he said it'd be about 6 months or so.
Okay, now, everyone can hear me. Whereas March is American Red Cross Month, a special time to recognize and thank our everyday heroes, those who reach out to help their neighbors when they are in need. And whereas American Red Cross heroes are on the front lines every day, they volunteer their time, give blood, take life-saving courses, or provide financial donations to help those in need. And whereas we would like to remember our heroes in Topeka who give to help people in need. They work tirelessly to help in time of disaster when someone needs life-saving blood or the comfort of a helping hand. They provide round-the-clock support to members of the military, veterans, and their families, and teach life-saving classes in CPR, aquatic safety, and first aid. And whereas we dedicate the month of March to all those who support the American Red Cross mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. Our community depends on the American Red Cross, which relies on donations of time, money, and blood to fulfill its humanitarian mission. And now, therefore, I, Larry Wolgast, or I, Denise Everhart, on behalf of Larry Wolgast, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do hereby proclaim March 2014 as American Red Cross Month. And I would like to recognize Mr. Cook here, H.R. Cook. Do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Councilwoman Everhart. Yes, May is Red Cross Month, and I appreciate the City Council recognizes. It's also getting ready for severe weather, so please have your go kits ready to go and check your smoke detectors in your homes. The Red Cross responds to at least 3 fires in this community per week. The community itself can help out the Red Cross if you so choose, either through monetary donations. But also to be prepared for those emergencies that may come up, whether it be severe weather or a potential fire. But also, we're also looking for volunteers. It's a very rewarding experience to volunteer with the Red Cross and look in the eyes of those who have, through no fault of their own, have lost everything, either through a fire or a tornado or other natural disaster, and be able to give them a helping hand. So with that proclamation, I appreciate it very much, and thank you.
The next proclamation is for the Topeka chapter of the Association of Government Accountants. And I'm not sure who all we have here. I think Nicole Malott and Nikki Roberts. If you'd come forward, and then I'll read the proclamation. Whereas the Topeka chapter of Association of Government Accountants is a professional organization belonging to the AGA, which represents more than 15,000 members around the world working as state, federal, and municipal private sector accountants, auditors, and financial managers. And whereas AGA Topeka chapter members have responded to AGA's mission of advancing government accountability with broad educational efforts and emphasis on high standards of conduct, honor, and character, and are making significant advances in both professional ability and service to the citizens of Kansas by mastering increasingly technical and complex requirements. And whereas the Certified Government Financial Manager Program of AGA provides a means of demonstrating professionalism and competency by requiring CGFM candidates to have expertise in the government environment, governmental financial management and control, and governmental accounting, financial reporting and budgeting, and requires each CGFM holder to maintain certification. And whereas the Topeka chapter of AGA is marking the completion of its 35th year of service to the state, federal, municipal government entities, and to the public through private sector support. Now, therefore, I, Larry Wolgass, Mayor of the City of Topeka, and Deputy Mayor Denise Everhart, do hereby proclaim March 2015 as Certified Government Financial Manager Month. And I'd like to hand this off if somebody wants to speak. Go ahead.
Didn't really have anything additional to add. You have it all there in the proclamation. So just on behalf of everybody in Topeka AGA, thank you.
Thank you all. We also have a presentation tonight. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to ask Nikki Lee to approach the podium. She is going to provide some information on a Distinguished Budget Award that we have recently received.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Doug Gerber. He prepared some comments.
I meant Doug.
Oh, well, they both need to be recognized. Mr. Gerber.
This is Deputy Mayor. Thank you. We tag team things very well in the department. So we've had a good month, fresh off of our award, our Certificate of Achievement from GFOA and our CAFR, our Consolidated Annual Financial Report. We received notice from GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, that we received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. So I'm very pleased tonight to just talk very briefly about that. This is an exciting award for us. In order to receive this award, we have to meet some nationally accepted guidelines for effective budget presentation, budget transparency, budget openness. And we met those 4 guidelines in these 4 specific areas. Our budget is evaluated as to how it serves as a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide, and a communications device. Things that the book, that our budget book receives some outstanding awards for, or outstanding praise for, included the presentation of strategic goals and strategies and our long-range financial plans. So we're very proud of that. You know, when I came to work for the city of Topeka, I was promised both a challenge and that it would be a fun job, and Jim has been true to his word on both those counts. It's been challenging and fun, and this is one of those fun things. It's nice that the hard work of staff, particularly Nikki Lee, the budget manager, and Brandon Kaufman is recognized. And So with that, I'm very honored and pleased to be able to announce this award tonight in front of the council.
Thank you, and congratulations. I think it's wonderful, and I certainly know that we have been seeing much better progress in our financial reports and the budget, and it's wonderful. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Does it, yeah. And I would open the floor if anyone else has any comments or questions for Mr. Gerber. Mrs. Hiller.
I do not have a comment or question, but I think Brandon Kaufman, who's part of that award, should stand up as well. So everybody knows who he is.
Absolutely. Seeing no further questions, we'll proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Wolgast. Councilmember Hiller. Here. Councilmember Brown. Here. Councilmember Ortiz.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Everhart.
Here.
Councilmember De La Isla. Councilmember Manspeaker.
Here.
Councilmember Schwartz.
Here.
Councilmember Schmidt.
Here.
And Councilmember Harmon.
And I did get word from Councilwoman De La Isla. She couldn't be here tonight because she has an ill family member that she is taking care of. And I believe Councilman Harmon said he may be late to the meeting, so we'll look forward to his joining us. Are there any additions or changes to the consent agenda? Yes.
Madam Deputy Mayor, we have discovered that there needs to be a correction to item 4C, the noise exception for the Celtic Fox. It needs to be dealt with this evening since that event is this coming Saturday. It is a simple time change. The agenda and the item currently say 10 o'clock to 1 p.m. It needs to be switched to 10 to 8 only. But my understanding is that would mean it needs to come off the consent agenda and be added perhaps as item 5H, an action item.
So is that a motion that that be withdrawn from the consent agenda and be added as 5H?
If that needs to be motion, yes, I so move.
And so we have a motion and a second by Mr. Brown. All those in favor or opposed?
Councilmember Everhart.
I vote yes.
Yes. We have 7 yes.
Then proceeding to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
As a board appointment, recommending the appointment of Jamie Slack to the Citizens Advisory Council to fill an unexpired term ending December 31st, 2016. B is a board appointment, recommending the appointment of Brian Bookwalter to the Citizens Advisory Council for a 3-year term ending February 28, 2018. C was just moved to 5H, and D is minutes of the regular meeting of February 17th, 2015, and there are no applications this evening.
Okay. And what is the pleasure of the,
Move to approve.
okay? Councilman Schmidt moves to approve, and it's seconded by Councilwoman Schwartz. All those in favor or opposed?
And your vote?
Vote yes.
7 yes.
The vote being taken, it has passed. Moving on to action items. We have 5, oh, let me ask though first, of the board appointment, do we have anyone present? Jamie Slack?
Jamie?
You want to stand? Yeah. That's what I was going to say. We want to welcome you. Thank you. I didn't want to miss that opportunity. So if you, this is our board appointee. Oh, we have Mr. Bookwalter as well. Oh, great. I only saw one hand go up. So welcome. Thank you for your service. All right, moving to action items. 5A, if the clerk would read.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson pertaining to an amendment to the Comprehensive Metropolitan Plan, adopting the Land Use and Growth Management Plan 2040.
Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is an item that has been before this body a couple of times in recent months. I would like to ask Mr. Fyander to come forward and answer any questions that you may have on this.
Mr. Fyander.
Good evening. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, council members. We are back before you one more time. I will just try and be brief. Tonight is really a culmination of a process that was started over 2 years ago to update our land use and growth plans to align with fiscal health and sustainable smart growth objectives. Tonight you have three documents before you to carry that out. The first document is, of course, our update to the land use and growth management plan. Again, this is the policy document. And to remind you, this is our top, it states our top priority for growth within the city limits. That is where we already have our services and our investments. This is the first time the city would adopt an official policy of growth from within is our top priority. Knowing that we can't achieve all of our growth within those limits, the plan puts forth standards to grow a little smarter outside when we do have to grow at our edges. And so really affordability and the ability to be compact will dictate those growth patterns. We also adopt standards that will hopefully reserve room for future urban growth as well. So how do we do that? So the two companion ordinances after this document help to do that. Number one, there's subdivision regulations that will implement those policies of the plan that basically makes a change from city approval for plats from 3 acres to 20 acres as recommended in the plan. And that will hopefully ensure that new subdivisions tie back into those standards of the plan. Then the second companion ordinance that helps implement the plan involves utilities outside our city limits. So whenever we have city water, city sewer outside the city limits, and someone wants to connect to those, they are required to be annexed and plat. We maintain those two requirements, but there are also a handful of exemptions for annexation that we clarify that also tie back, again, to be consistent with the plan. So we are recommending that since those are further defined and clarified and tied back to the plan, that we can approve those exemptions for annexation administratively with this plan. I won't belabor the fact that we've been over a pretty extensive process now with our planning commission and engagement with stakeholders. As you heard it the last time I was here, we found out that every property is different, and so we need some flexibility to really balance those interests. We have the interest of the city growth. We also have interest of landowners, and so affording us some flexibility, which this plan does, protects and hopefully advances both of those interests. So we'll continue to work with owners outside the city as well to do just that. Land use and growth management plan and the subdivision ordinance has been recommended unanimously by the Planning Commission before you, and they also have an agreement with the changes to the utility ordinance that was also before you. So with that kind of sums up the three items in line tonight, and we would ask for a motion to approve as those are read. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? All right, we do have public comment, so I would ask for Mr. Jim Renner. If you'd proceed.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and friends on the council and city manager. Thanks for allowing me to come to talk tonight. First of all, I want to make sure that you know I'm not in opposition to this at all. I do, however, have some concerns that I want to bring to your attention. I know this is a verbose document, a lot to consider, and some things that I just want to bring to your attention. The document I passed around provides some definitions, some things that we kind of brush over. First of all, I do want to apologize that I'm just now getting to speak on this. I know it's kind of late hour for this proposal, but I understood that there's flexibility built into this, and I'm just concerned that flexibility doesn't allow some of the things to be considered the way it should. But the urban growth, or the planned urban growth that's described on the bottom of this page, does show the different tiered growth that's intended to be planned for the outskirts of the city limits, and it makes a lot of sense. The line drawn around the perimeter of the city limits is what I understand to be defined as the extraterritorial jurisdiction that the city has the ability or has the responsibility of providing planning guidelines over it. Second page, there's a couple images here. One that indicates the city limits of the city, and then shows some of the utilities that extend out beyond the city that we've put investment into, and that's part of what these guidelines are trying to do, is to maximize the use of our infrastructure within the city as much as we can, and not continue to try and serve outside the limits. When you consider the image on the bottom of that page, it demonstrates the previously adopted wastewater management plans that recognize some of the intent and the long planned development of the areas outside the city limits. The urban growth area, again, is shown kind of on the periphery of the city limits on that bottom diagram. If you go on to the third page, you see areas that fall outside the urban growth area and within the EJT that you have control over, that are really in kind of a no man's land in the way it's considered in the guidelines and the way there's development. Really, the EJT is kind of set aside to consider development in the long term, the 100-year plan, 50-year to 100-year plan. So it kind of neglects those areas, or it doesn't provide for opportunity to develop in some of those areas. The bottom image there shows the parcel size map showing the urban sprawl, indicating that there's a lot of areas outside the city that continue to develop, and you're trying to keep that within the city limits. Well, if you go on to the next page, you see what I think might be the unintended consequences of the 20-acre minimum lot requirement in the EJT portion of the county. You're forbidden to have improvements on these properties under 20 acres within that 3-mile boundary around the city, so people are going to want to go on outside that. I do have a personal interest in this, that's why I'm talking. My family, my siblings, and I have a property in trust in North Topeka that falls within this area outside the urban growth area.
Mr. Renner, your time's up unless there's a motion.
How much time would you?
2 minutes.
2 more minutes? Move to extend for 2 more minutes for Mr. Renner.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Brown. All those in favor? Yes.
We have 7 yes.
Go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. So this property we have in trust, my father acquired about 50 years ago, and he had intention to do some basically urban development on it. He was trying to do some housing development and did some preliminary planning design for it, but realized that without adequate sewer out there, there was never going to be any hope for it, and he learned pretty quickly that there was no intention to get sewer out there. But he did say it's just a matter of time till this property is developable. Well, 50 years later, it's no closer to being developable than it was 50 years ago. And I challenge you to look at this property and say that in 50 years or 100 years, that there would be services out there, or that the city would urbanize into this area. Right now, the property is really rendered kind of undevelopable. It's if you look on the second to the last page, It's describing the 17-acre parcel that's restricted from development based on the 20-acre minimum. We just don't have the ability to do anything with it other than to farm it or to maybe build one home on 17 acres. We had wanted to do, on the bottom of that page, you see a platted home sites, 6 platted home sites that are proposed to fit within the neighborhood environment and would provide water revenue, tying into the existing water lines out there that are already installed, and take advantage of that. Be a good neighborhood. What I'm really looking for is a consideration that you look at this condition, things outside the UGA within the EJT, and look at your criteria as described in this last slide, and consider an amendment to the LUGMP.
Thank you, Mr. Renner.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hiller?
Could we, I know that when Mr. Fyander gave his presentation, he indicated that each property is different and the decisions would have to be made accordingly. I wondered if it would be all right to have Mr. Fyander react to this parcel and tell us whether, even though it's 17 acres today, whether they could work with them.
If you have a question for Mr. Fyander, that would be fine.
Okay.
Mr. Fyander?
Councilmember Hiller, we have, as I said, have every property has a different story. In this case, because you have utility, it's on city water line, it would need to be platted and annexed into the city. One of the exemptions for annexation is to comply with the standards of the plan. Now, the current plan says exactly that, 20-acre minimum, okay? The proposed plan looks at, okay, can we go below 20 acres and still reserve the ability for the city to grow into that area? So we've looked at this particular piece, and there was one comment I think that was made, I wanted to correct. Anything beyond our urban growth area is not, under 20 acres is not forbidden. Actually, we keep the 3-acre minimum lot size out beyond the urban growth area. So for this particular property, if you apply the standards today, we're looking at least 4 lots that could be patterned in a way that still leaves room for future urbanization. So that's our preliminary look. We've looked at, we've met with the owner, and we'll continue to meet and try in some resolution. But without the flexibility here, we're kind of stuck. So we'd like to think there's a balance. Does that?
That does help.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have taken advantage of your offer before for a personal run through this because it is kind of dizzying. And as long as I sort of thought you would say something like that based on what the flexibility you had advised me was in the plan. And as long as you see that within this, we can work with individuals based on the particular property, I really appreciate that. So,
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? If not, what's the body's wish? Anyone making a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Yeah, seconded by Councilwoman Swartz. All those in favor or opposed? Yes.
We have 7 yes.
The motion having passed. Moving on to 5B, clerk will read.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson concerning subdivision and minor plat process, amending City of Topeka Code Sections 1830-010, 1830-020, and 1835-010, and repealing original sections.
Mr. City Manager, do you want to recognize Mr. Fyander again?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would, these next 2 items are related to the last item. I would like to recognize Mr. Fyander with your permission.
Mr. Fyander.
Thank you again. I'll just reiterate what I did in the opening, is that the main change here would take city approval. When you hear plat approval, that means city approval of new subdivisions, new lots outside the city from 3 acres to 20 acres. So we would have to approve any new lots between 3 and 20 acres. Right now, it's just only those less than 3 acres we end up approving. So that's the main change. I don't want to confuse the issue anymore, but if you have questions, I'm here to help.
Are there any questions or comments at this point? We do have a public comment. I don't see any yet, so I would recognize Harold Weller.
I just wanted to make a few comments on a farmer's point of view as it goes out from the city. A lot of people have bought farms and have farmed it, and then when they get old enough to retire, when they're so close to the city, they intend to sell lots to supplement their Social Security. And so if you go to 20 acres, why, that cuts down on the amount of lots that they can sell to supplement their Social Security. And Manhattan had this rule, and you can check on it, that they had 20 acres. So they did this for a while, and they found out that people would build on that 20 acres or 40 acres, whichever the case may be, and the people actually would only use about 3 acres, and the rest of it, they found out was too much to take care of, so they just let it grow up. So then you have a blighted area, and then it grew up, and then you had fires in the city of Manhattan, and the volunteer fire departments had to fight these fires, and so it really, it didn't accomplish anything. The people just used 3 acres, and you just had this blighted area. So this here, going to more acres really don't accomplish what it really appears like that it would. And that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Renner, Mr. Weller. Is there any further comments or questions? Yes, Councilman Schmidt.
Yeah, this is probably going to be directed towards Bill, Mr. Finder. This allows for development under 20 acres for 3-acre development outside of the city limits. It doesn't have to be just a 20-acre parcel, correct?
Correct. Councilmember Schmidt, the plan adopts standards where you can go below 20 acres. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention, and I didn't say this earlier, that the 20-acre minimum for a plat exemption just extends to the urban growth area, which is about 1/3 of the entire 3-mile limit. Beyond that urban growth area, we have maintained the 3-acre minimum for a plat exemption. We just extended the frontage a little bit wider so we can get a street in there one day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? And what's the will of the body? Is there a motion? Councilman Schmidt?
Move to approve.
Seconded by Mr. Brown. All those in favor?
We have 7 yes.
The matter having passed, we'll move on to item 5C. And again, Mr. City Manager, do you want Mr. Fiander to
Thank you, Mr.
come to
Mayor.
the podium?
Thank you, Mrs. Deputy Mayor. I would like to ask Mr. Fiander.
Mr. Fiander.
Thank you. To summarize my earlier comments, again, this is regarding utility service outside the city where we require annexation. Those exemptions to annexation, we have clarified in this update. I want to make you aware that With those, those exemptions tie back now to the plan, so as long as you're consistent with the plan with your new lots, this does not get into exempting property and having us extend lines further and further. This is exemptions for where our lines already are, where it's adjacent to property out beyond the city. Excuse me. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions?
Deputy Mayor, I don't believe the clerk read this.
Oh, I apologize. Did I not have the clerk read this one? Clerk, read, please.
C is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson concerning water and sewer services outside of the city limits, amending City of Topeka Code Sections 1310-120 and 1310-220, and repealing original section.
All right, now, are there any questions or motions? Yes, Councilman Brown. It's been moved to approve by Mr. Brown. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilwoman Schwartz. All those in favor?
We have 7 yes.
7 having voted in favor, the motion or the ordinance passes. Moving on to 5D, a resolution, if the clerk would read.
D is a resolution introduced by City Manager Jim Colson expressing support for the Johnston Village Development Project by the Topeka Housing Authority Incorporated.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is a resolution that would express support for Johnston Village, which is a proposed development by Topeka Housing Authority for low-income housing tax credits. We discussed this in a discussion-only item. Just as a reminder, this is not the only item from the city of Topeka that is located within the city of Topeka that would be under consideration. There are 4 other projects, including the most recently discussed Victory Village. But at this point, we would just be adding one additional letter of support for this particular project. The decision will be made ultimately by the state in terms of the availability of funds, and we would just add this to that list. Thank you. Sasha Stiles is available will make a presentation on this, and also Trey George from the Topeka Housing Authority is available to answer any questions that may be.
Ms. Stiles?
Good evening. The presentation really you saw at the last city council meeting, Bill Fiander presented you with a bunch of information. In addition to that, Trey George also presented information. The resolution is included in your council packet along with all of the presentation materials that you were provided with at the last meeting. Delighted to answer any questions that you may have. I think the city manager did a fantastic job of outlining. This is just a resolution of support. It doesn't guarantee that the project actually receives the tax credits, but it does express support by the governing body of this affordable housing project in the community. Again, as Mr. Colston stated, Trey George is in attendance and is available to answer specific questions that you may have in terms of the project. I would be delighted to answer any questions that you may have about the process in terms of the resolution of support.
Is there any questions? Yes. Recognize Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to talk to the gentleman, Trey. Good evening.
Good evening.
This is in my district, and I've had some phone calls of concerns, and I've also had some phone calls of support. And I just wanted to publicly say to you, you've heard those concerns.
Yes, ma'am.
You've heard about the noise, the lighting, the upkeep, and all that. And I just want you to keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and support this, but you've heard those concerns, and I hope that you take that to heart, because those neighbors there are near and dear to my heart, and I think it's going to clean up that corner there. Across the street is Denise's district, but I still know a lot of those constituents, and I still, they're near and dear to my heart, and they're concerned, and rightly so. They've been there for a lifetime. So I just wanted to say that to you. Please continue to hear their concerns.
Yes, ma'am, and I do appreciate that, and we absolutely have heard them loud and clear. And just real briefly, we have met with management from some of the different complexes. We have extended the invitation that we will continue to work with the NIA. Overall, we absolutely want to be a good neighbor, and we absolutely want to be a positive for the city of Topeka. And so, as we've expressed to everybody, if you have concerns, please by all means contact us at any time. We only want to do things to better the city of Topeka and living conditions for those who reside within it. So I greatly appreciate the comment, and I definitely appreciate y'all's support. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any, yes, Mrs. Hiller?
Two short ones for Trey, I think. One, would it be accurate to say that in terms of its appearance and its fit into this neighborhood, that your proposed development would appear to be an upscale new development whose rents would be in the range of $600 a month?
Yes, ma'am. That is correct. Aesthetically, if you're familiar with how the units look at Echo Ridge, we're utilizing the same architect, and so they will look very, very similar to that. I don't think we've got down to the color choice yet, but as far as the what the actual structures look like, they'll be single-story, 1- and 2-bedroom duplexes. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I think that just helps to make sure people have a picture of what we're talking about developing here, and you've done a wonderful job in the past. A second question, if I may, was we did have a number of those residents that you were making reference to and managers contact us before the last hearing as well as came. No one is on the agenda this evening. Usually that's a good sign. Could you just give us an idea of what conversations you've had since then and if there have been promises made and so on?
Absolutely. We've been in contact with the Highland Acres NIA. I know some of the concerns were really pertaining around the Deer Creek property, and that's caused us to come back and definitely take a greater look at, as mowing was one of the issues that was brought up, and I don't think I mentioned this last time, but we are the first ones to say we absolutely failed at that last year. We attempted to do something as a cost-saving measure, and it was the wrong choice. That will not be done again this year. We have already put out our mowing for bid this year. We attempted to do it in-house last year, and that was probably a little bit more than we had anticipated to bite off. I know another concern is trash, and that's something we are actively looking at. We do have a contractor that we pay that goes out and picks up trash 1 time per week on the property, and then we send staff over 1 time per week to pick up trash from the property. Our challenge there is that we have to utilize dumpsters, and they have to be open air, they don't have to be open air dumpsters, so we're trying to look at some sort of enclosure that doesn't create a blind spot, but we can't because there's not sidewalks to the units and walkways up there. We can't have individual roll-up dumpsters, such as we have at almost every other property that we have other than our high rises. And so we're looking at ways that we can better provide trash pickup in the area, not only by ourselves, but just for the tenants themselves. If it's additional dumpsters that are closer to their units, if there's some sort of enclosure, some sort of trash dumpster that we can actually close to prevent it from blowing around. So those are some things that we're working on. We have met with management from Colonial Park, which is directly a neighbor to the east of Deer Creek, and ensured an open line of communication. Anytime if there's concerns, by all means, please contact us. And they shared the same. They said, please let us know if there's any problems there. One other thing I will say that we're very excited about, we just found out in between our last two, is that the Topeka Police Department has chosen to locate their 7 community police officers for East Topeka at the Deer Creek property. And they will take their offices there April 1st. We're in the process of renovating the basement for that. We are extremely pleased with that. We are very excited just for the neighborhood and everybody concerned. It'll be fantastic to have 7 officers working in and out of that building on a daily basis. So we made that space available to them. We're in the process of renovating it for their needs, and so we're very happy with that. And I think that will go a long way with the NIA as well as just surrounding neighborhoods, so from a crime standpoint.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank
Appreciate that. Something else we talked about as you were leaving the other day was the issue of special pickups, that the trash companies won't do that for apartment complexes, and arranging the service like what we have for residential homeowners to get the special pickups might help as well.
Absolutely. We have a 40-yard dumpster at our office that we constantly have 2 trash trucks that basically go out as an on-needed basis, but at least weekly to each property, and pick up any large furniture items that are left outside that that won't be picked up otherwise. So
thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
I can support as well. Thank you.
there any other questions? I don't have any questions, but I will make a comment, not as my duties as deputy mayor, but as in my, for my council district. I have heard only opposition to this in my district, Ed. So I'm not going to support it. I think that there is a lot of concern about trying to build the neighborhood into a healthy neighborhood, and healthy neighborhoods have home ownership. And that's a big issue. I mean, you are addressing the trash and things like that, and that's certainly good, because the existing facility at Deer Creek, yeah, there's been a lot of complaints that I've received. In fact, I drove down 25th Street and I knew exactly what they were talking about with the trash that was all over. So, you know, just speaking on my behalf, I'm not going to be able to support this, because I feel like I need to owe my allegiance to those people in the district who've been pretty strong in their opposition to more of this in their area, as opposed to trying to get more home ownership. Because I mean, when they look at healthy neighborhoods, one of the things they're looking at is how many owners are there. So that's a big issue, and so I'm not going to be able to support it. And it, so, you know, I don't have any questions for you. And it also concerns me that at least twice now, this body has tried hard and done everything we could do to make sure that homeless veterans are addressed, and still they don't get approved. And so, you know, I'm not going forward on more public housing in an area that's
No, public housing.
well, I'm low-income housing, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going forward on that when we still don't seem to address some of the most neediest folks in our community. But having said my piece as Council District 4 person, is there any other questions or?
Motion to approve.
Been moved and approved, moved by Councilwoman Ortiz, seconded by Councilman Manspeaker. All those in favor?
You're a no. We have 6 yes and Councilmember Everhart voting no.
6 having voted yes, the motion passes. Councilwoman Ortiz?
That was my question, since I didn't know
Yeah.
there was a percentage. Okay, thank you.
Moving on. We would be on 5E, so if the clerk would read.
E is a final plat for Horseshoe Bend subdivision number 4 on property located along the south side of the Kansas Turnpike, approximately 1,500 feet north of Southeast 45th Street and 2,000 feet east of Southwest Topeka Boulevard, all being within the northeast intersection of Southwest Topeka Boulevard and Southeast 45th Street, City of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Approval would allow for 36 new single-family residential lots in modified phasing for the next phase of the Horseshoe Bend subdivision. Mr. Fyander is available to answer any questions on this particular item.
Mr. Fyander? Or are there questions for Mr. Fyander? I'm not seeing any.
Motion to approve.
Councilwoman Ortiz moves to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilwoman Swartz. All those in favor? Oh, yes.
You're a no? Okay. We have 6 yes, Mr. Manspeaker voting no.
The motion passes. Moving on to 5F. Mr. City Manager.
F is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of January 3rd, 2015 through January 30th, 2015, and enumerating said expenditures therein.
Now, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Approval would authorize the city expenditures in the amount of $16,726,767.10.
All right.
Motion approved.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz and is seconded by Mr. Brown. All those in favor?
We have 7 yes.
7 having voted in favor, the measure passes. Moving on to, there is no applications. correct?
There are no applications. this
Okay, we are now, that closes out our action items. Oh, sorry. We have 5H, and I would recognize Councilwoman Hiller.
It's been described before. I would move approval of this item, which allows noise exemption for the Celtic Fox for the St. Patrick's Day celebrations on Saturday, the 14th of March, from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Second.
Just to clarify, are you making it, you're offering an amendment to?
Oh, I need to amend it.
It has
first.
to be amended, so.
Never mind. I move to amend.
It has to be offered first, that there has to be something to amend, so if somebody would want to move to approve, and then there
Right.
can be a motion to amend, and then a vote.
Right.
Sorry, I'm doing fast
So
forward.
you want to, yes, do you want to move to approve?
Move to approve the resolution on the agenda.
All right, Councilwoman Hiller moves to approve, Councilwoman Ortiz seconds.
Moves to amend.
And
Move to
I'll
amend.
Yes, I'll recognize Councilwoman Hiller. And you want to explain your amendment so people understand it's a change in time.
I move to amend the time from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. to 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. on the same dates.
All right, is there a second to that amendment? Seconded by Councilwoman Ortiz. All those in favor?
We have 7 yes.
We have 7 yes, the amendment passes. Now, Councilwoman Hiller, would you like to move 5H as amended?
Move 5H as amended.
Is there a second? Councilwoman Schmidt seconds the resolution as amended. All those in favor?
Sorry. Go ahead and vote again. Yes. We have 7 yes.
7 having voted in favor, the resolution passes. Now that closes out our action items, and we will move to Section 6, non-action items. And I would ask the clerk to read A.
A is a discussion of the proposed 2016 to 2020 capital improvement plan and 2016 to 2018 capital improvement budget.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to ask Nikki Lee to lead the discussion pertaining to the proposed 2016 and 2020 capital improvement plan. I think the starting point here is we've had a lot of discussions over the last couple of years about how to do this more effectively and allow for better planning. We're really in the first year of this, which this would be the second year going forward. So I'll ask Nikki to provide the overview and go through it.
Good evening. Thank you again. As was just explained, this is a continuation of really a revised process that we began last year with the 2015 through 2019 capital improvement plan. So I wanted to begin with just a brief overview of the process so you all in the public know exactly what you're looking at right now. And then we'll follow by highlighting some specific projects within the plan and open it up for any discussion. So a reminder of the capital improvement plan process. The capital improvement plan is a document containing 5 years of planned capital improvements. It's an annual process that's starting with last year's budget process we adopt before the operating budget, so usually in the spring or early summer. And the CIP contains a 3-year capital improvement budget, which means that the first 3 years of the plan, you're actually authorizing those project budgets for those specific projects to begin. And also a reminder here that the CIP is actually a living document. So with every given year, there's the opportunity to update any projects that maybe were already included in last year's capital improvement plan, to add projects. So it could be that even though last year you actually had already approved really the years 16 through 19, this year there's a chance, since it's a living document, there may be updates, more information. There may actually be revisions to the years that had been approved in the last year's CIP. And really that's an ongoing, that's going to happen every year with the next year's 5-year plan. So I wanted to clarify that. Just a quick overview of the types of projects, and all this information again is included in the capital improvement plan document, which is available on the website for members of the public to view. And in that document there's about 11 pages of introductory material. One thing that we like to outline are the types of projects to really explain how we organize our capital improvement projects. These are similar to what you've seen in past years with the addition of facilities. This year we have some projects that address some of our deferred maintenance that makes up a portion of our CIP this year. Also, we like to organize the plan by different funding sources. Most of these funding sources you are pretty used to seeing: general obligation bonds, our utility funds. The additions this year would be, one would be the countywide half-cent sales tax extension. So the projects that you'll see included in this year's CIP hadn't previously been represented in our capital improvement plan document, but we believe these are important projects that the public need to know about and that really should be addressed in a comprehensive capital improvement plan. So again, in this CIP, we're only focusing on the extension piece that begins in 2017. In addition, I would say that this year's CIP kind of has a renewed focus on the cash projects. So before, these may have been projects that were included just in the operating budget. But we really believe if a project has a certain dollar amount or a certain merit, it really should be included in the capital improvement plan as well. So now we're going to kind of tag team this presentation. Doug Whitaker is going to step up and answer some questions about some specific projects. This certainly isn't every project that's included in the capital improvement plan. We selected projects that either had changes from the last year's plan or we believed merited some explanation or we thought might be important to highlight for the public. So we'll focus on some of our general fund and other fund projects here, and then we'll shift to talking about a few of the utility projects.
Deputy Mayor, Council, good evening. I'll take you through, let me make sure, what do we hit here to go to the next slide? Page up? I'm sorry.
Just the right arrow.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Take you to the neighborhood program. This is the project is a component of the SORT program, and generally the city targets a majority of the neighborhood resources into 2 redevelopment areas, and this for the 2016-2017 years it would be North Topeka West and Highcrest. And these funds, the work would be rebuilding deteriorated streets, it would be curb and gutters, alleys, sidewalks as identified, through the program there. The funding is basically through GO bonds, federal funding that comes in, and then wastewater is cash, and that's primarily is the sewer work and like that may be required in an alley if we were renovating an alley area. And that project was on page 13, I'm sorry, with the book. The next project we're going to highlight is Southeast California, and that would be pages 29 and 30 in your book. The first part of it, this is broken into 2 areas, 33rd to 37th, and this project constructs 3-lane pavement on Southeast California between 33rd and 37th. It would include curb and gutter, obviously new street, sidewalks, street lighting, and drainage system. And this picture here is looking, it's a little bit north of 33rd and looking south towards 37th, as I believe. This project, again, was started in 15 with design, and 14 with design, and in 15 we would be looking at right-of-way, and then construction would begin in 2016. The other, I'm sorry, we had one picture. The other half is 29th to 33rd, and this particular portion would begin as a 5-lane at 29th and run 5-lane through the commercial area, which would tie in there, and then narrow down to 3-lane on down, which is through the residential area on down towards 33rd. Again, it would be new roadway, curb and gutter, sidewalks, street lighting, and drainage. And this project would basically get into, this section of the road would go into design in 2016 with construction slated for 17. As Nikki mentioned, this year we tried to build in, this is the municipal building renovations, is we've had a lot of deferred maintenance within our facilities, and we haven't done a lot of work. And so we've taken, this City Hall does have needs related to HVAC. There's some asbestos still in the walls and et cetera. On the second floor, we have the sewer gas issue there with older domestic waste piping, and then lighting upfits would be needed in the facility, and also the domestic plumbing lines in there are also quite old, and so if we've got the walls and like that opened up, we'd want to replace the water lines rather than continue to hope. Usually my facilities team tells me a water line breaks somewhere in that building each year, so it gives us plenty of work there. And again, this would be identifying initial design. When I say design, how we want to use the space, basically more space planning, design, and then doing, obviously we'd have to have building plans, et cetera, to meet all the codes, and then there would be construction. Next would be, if you go to page 103, I think it's the last page in your book, would be the city half-cent sales tax projects. We have projects listed for 16 and then tentative projects for 17 through 20. And again, the 17 through 20 we would review each year. We would update as we bring back and verify that the condition requires the need to rebuild those areas. This picture here is South Topeka Boulevard between 7th to 11th. And this is, we just highlighted this. This is probably one of the more busy sections of the Topeka Boulevard. There, the average daily traffic in this area is about 20,000 vehicles. So it's a very heavily area, and the road is in pretty poor shape if you've driven out there in that area. Next item would be page 34. And this is Southwest 10th, and it's Fairlawn to Wanamaker. This is again in a geo-bonded project. This replaced, last year we had 6th Street from Gage to Fairlawn listed as a general obligation bond project. As you all know, that was one of the projects that was accepted in, or is now being funded through the county half-cent sales tax extension. So therefore, we moved that project out of the geo bond list and added, this is probably one of the last roads. It runs about 8,300 vehicles a day through this section, and it's the last section really that hasn't, one of our major east-west arterials that has not been rebuilt. We're doing 10th from Gage to Fairlawn. Will be done in beginning in 16, we're finishing up right-of-way, et cetera, this year, and utility movement, and then it would be reconstructed in 16, 17 time frame. Just to highlight, we mentioned Southwest 6th Street Gage to Fairlawn. This would be in the county-wide half-cent sales tax extension, and again, this would be widened 6th Avenue. It would be 3-lane between Gage and Fairlawn, and again, it would include new curb and gutter, sidewalk, street lighting, drainage system, and obviously new road. And as I said, it's funded through the county half-cent sales tax. And this note is just that the exact years and funding for this particular project are just proposed at this time. We have reviewed all of those projects, planning, street, and engineering. The county half-cent felt this street is the one that is in the worst condition now, and so it would be staff's recommendation that this be one of the first ones we look at when we go into the county half-cent sales tax. However, that's until we get the interlocal agreement. That's why we said that, you know, it's proposed right now, because obviously those dates have not been set. So this would be our proposal there. Again, as the tax comes in 17, that's why it would be in 17 and 18. The next project is a new project, and that was added, and in 2012-13, the conceptual plan was completed to look at the weir, and let me just maybe just explain this. This is the weir up at the water plant. And this is looking across from south to north. The purpose of the weir when it was constructed is to push water towards the intakes for the water plant to assure that we always have water, and I've been told we've never not had water for the intakes, so that it has done its purpose and served us well. However, there are safety concerns. You can see the turbulent water there. If you look, this gives you a little better view. There's an aerial shot of that weir. And there was a conceptual plan project approved a couple of years ago to look at what could we do safety-wise, and then also looking forward into with the riverfront development that we're all looking at, would be looking at in the downtown area, is to, again, improve safety and create some recreational activities on the river for the citizens. And basically, the concept, this is the concept that came up from the consultant. On the bottom section of the page there, it would be where we would make the safety improvements to try to help with the turbulence and et cetera that has happened there. Water, when it goes over, doesn't, it doesn't go like this, you'd think. It goes more like this, so if you get hung up in it, you are held up against the weir. And so again, we're trying to make safety considerations there. The top part of this page there, the picture, would be kind of, let me just show you, this is kind of a rendering that this would be, that would allow kayakers and boaters to be able to come down and gradually drop the distance of the weir and go through its 4 or 5 different steps as you go down through to kind of provide water recreation there. This is part of the Riverfront Initiative, being is we're trying to create an activity on the river. The WARDA obviously was all the rebuilding of the levees, and there's been some traction there with obviously Congress passing the WARDA and also starting to fund it from that standpoint, and I think there's more to come on that. And then we have met and trying to open up, there's the park eventually downtown along the river, and we'll do more of an update on this, but this kind of all ties in together with that. And this would be funded through grants, donations, and then cash is what we have listed right now, working with the Riverfront Authority. And approving this, I'm spending a little more time on this one, approval of this right now helps us to go apply for the grants and like that. You can't go apply for grants if you don't have an approved project that is a sanctioned project by your city government. And so that's what we're bringing in to present here, and this would be with design in 16 and then trying to do construction in 17 is the projected time frame for this one. And then lastly, wanted to look at the pedestrian master plan that we are planning is moving forward with engineering and actually has formed a team. This project would basically look at where do we need the sidewalks to fill in throughout the city and improve our traffic as far as pedestrian traffic from that standpoint. Just some pictures here on that. And what we've done here is we've always had in the CIP $150,000 per year for infill sidewalks, and with the anticipation of this plan being working this year, we're bumping that up to $500,000 because we would now have is what we're recommending in the CIP, because then we would use the plan to go in and actually fill in sidewalks throughout the city. And so actually the team kicks off here Thursday, I think it's March 24th, and I had it written down, let me see. And I apologize, I have the sheet, so somehow I ended up without it. But there is a meeting this month, the 25th, March 25th. The consultant will be in town to kick off the team meeting to start looking at all of the sidewalks. And so I think that completes my portion of it. I'll hand off on the utilities to Mr. Gerber.
Mr. Gerber?
Mrs. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Going to talk through a couple utilities projects here very briefly. The first one is the East Side Interceptor Relief, CSO Combined Sewer Overflow number 3 to Ash Street Pump Station. The reason we're highlighting this is because I think it ties in nicely with the discussion you'll have, hopefully pretty quickly, and that is on the, we'll have a presentation this evening on the CSO issue and our consent order agreement with KDHE. So this is just kind of a primer for that discussion this evening. This particular project will be a 2018-2019 project, and it's actually the continuation of an ongoing project. In fact, a project that's starting very soon in maybe the next week or so. And that's a SURL project that stands for Clean, Inspect, Repair, and Line. So we'll be looking at doing those things to the east side interceptor. That's a large sewer main that runs from Southwest 7th, Southwest Tyler to the Ash Street Pump Station, which is actually on Northeast Lake Street, and then it goes to the plant/river from there. That's an older part of the system. It's break in many spots, we think, and in places is up to 72 inches, which is a significantly large part of our system. So again, this relates to the CSO issue, and Phase 2, which is this 2018-2019 piece, will, the intent of that project will be to repair, do construction of whatever issues are found in the current ongoing study, with, of course, the long-term intent of reducing combined sewer overflow activities. The second project I want to highlight is actually from each of the utility funds, from stormwater, wastewater, and water, and that's the Equipment and Fleet Replacement Program. There's nothing super unique about this, except that it's in this, page 54 and page 75. That's the unique thing about this program, is that it's in the CIP this year. Previously, it's been in the budget, we've spent the money, but it hasn't been part of the CIP, and so the levels of spending obviously rise to the level of capital expense, and so we put it in the CIP this year, and we think that makes good sense. $400,000 total for stormwater and wastewater, and those are in alternating years. 1 year stormwater gets 300, wastewater gets 100, and then the next year it flips, because they managed to share a lot of the same equipment and do some nice maximization of resources between the two. And then $300,000 for water. Again, this was previously in the budget, but not in the CIP, and the other exciting part of this project is that it's cash. We won't be bonding anything, so that's always good news for everyone. And the final project is the Southeast Elevated Tower on Southeast 41st in California. And this project's on page 69, and it will generally consist of land acquisition and construction of a 500,000 gallon elevated tank in that general area. This will replace a 250,000 gallon tank, which doesn't meet our fire or domestic service needs for the future. It will also aid in the creation of some new water pressure zones. We'll go from the southeast and west zones, and those will eventually be transformed to the east and south zones. I know there's been a lot to talk about those, and this is just one piece of that puzzle. And this was identified in the 2002 Water Distribution System Master Plan, and is consistent with that plan. So, with that, I would turn it back over to Mrs. Lee.
That is the conclusion of our portion of this item. Just wanted to kind of remind you what the next steps would be. At this point, it's tentatively scheduled for approval of the actual resolutions, which would approve this capital improvement plan and capital improvement budget on next week's agenda. So we'll just open up for any questions or comments at this point.
Is there any questions or comments for our presenters? Councilwoman Hiller.
I do, thank you. And just to warn you, this is 103 pages long. I have 9, so that's short, and I'll keep them short. Doug Whitaker touched on a number of them, so I'm not sure to whom to address my questions. How you want me to handle it?
You should address them to the city manager. And he
Okay,
can...
I'll do that. Overall, first comment is that I really, really like this presentation. I like the inclusion of all the funding sources. I like the inclusion of the unfunded projects. I like the captions that help explain them. And I like the master tenure document that we got before that shows us the history of the recently completed projects. I think it's now emerging as a really, truly useful planning document. And I very much appreciate the follow-up piece that we got that breaks out the changes from last year's plan. I just think all those pieces were very helpful. Questions that I had or comments, staff didn't touch on it, but the fire truck replacement. I noted that I'm not unwilling to change what we had last year, but what happened is that I think all of the fire truck replacements got pushed forward at least a year, and some as much as 3. And we've just now got established our preferred rotation. My question would be then, is the proposal to delay those purchases because our fleet is now at a point where staff feels we don't need to replace them quite as soon, or was it driven by needing money for something else?
Well, I will turn that over to the fire chief, who can give you a more specific answer.
Thank you.
Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, council members, City Manager. Councilwoman Heller, we have stabilized our fleet, and so we actually did some trading off in the CIP process. I don't know the specific, it may have been air packs or AEDs, but we kind of reprioritized some of the things that we needed, and so we're comfortable with where we are with the fire apparatus being moved.
And just to make sure, you think then that the new years that are designated for those fire trucks will be timely for replacement in our fleet?
That is correct.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Second question had to do with the zoo line. We have been, and I love the zoo, we've been pumping millions of dollars into the zoo recently, and we're about to put another $8 million out of the countywide in there. My question was, we have, I think, 5 or 6 new projects from the zoo that total about $1 million, maybe more. And I wondered if you could explain those particular projects and whether there is urgency to have them funded soon.
Mr. City Manager?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, with your permission, I'd ask Mr. Wiley, the zoo director.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor, Councilwoman Hiller, Council, thank you. Yes, the first project deals with, actually, maybe I should ask you which first project you're looking at.
Well, the whole string of them, they were
The whole string.
all new, kind of marching down the plan. And they are on page 37 to 41, if people are looking for them.
Yes, the zoo greenhouse and storage building. If we want to maintain the consistent look of the zoo, there is some urgency with that. Previously, we borrowed space from the county, and the county, their space is essentially full. The second one, the zoo service road repair, is one that if we want to maintain the roads, it's beyond due. This has been bumped out of the CIP a couple times since I've been here. Some of the areas have actually deteriorated to the point where it's beyond mill and overlay. And it's a problem that will just continue to worsen unless we address it soon. The parking lot is one of those that is just trying to be proactive. That parking lot is used by the zoo, it's used by Helen Hawker, it's used by Big Gage, it's used by Animal Land, it's used whenever there's events in the park. And literally, it is in there just trying to stay on top of the maintenance. If there, and that's the choice to make. If there's a more pressing need, that's why it is there. The zoo rainforest HVAC is another similar item to that. Interestingly enough, the original swamp cooler system was replaced in 2009, maybe 2007. with about 30 tons of air conditioning. We are in the middle of adding, literally in the middle of a project, adding an additional 30 tons of air conditioning. I don't know if the Deputy Mayor remembers one day
I definitely remember.
that building is unique, and once in 2007 when we changed how it was originally designed, I'll leave that there. What we are trying to take in account here is HVAC units, especially ones that size that work that hard, have a lifespan. And we are anticipating that in that year, around 2019, some of those first units that were installed will need to be replaced. Today, they're working perfectly. The last item there is also another attempt at planning for maintenance that we know will be needed. That roof was installed in 1985, and today is showing wear, but we can maintain it. But we're anticipating within the next 5 years it will need to be replaced.
Mr. City Manager?
Thank you. Councilmember Miller, if I can insert myself in. I just want to explain the process, and maybe we can have Nikki do this in detail. And certainly we want to answer all the questions. I just want to help you understand the amount of work that went into the identification of the projects.
Your microphone.
The amount of work that went into the projects in terms of, from a management perspective, challenging everything that got brought forward. Nikki did a great job in being a traffic cop in terms of making sure that each of the departments, when they brought something forward, we could demonstrate that it was consistent with the mission of the organization and needed. So I'm not trying to stop your questions, but each of these things was very specifically looked at, and I think the staff, as you can see from the work that's been done here, it's been thought through in a much more substantial way than has ever been done in the past. So I just wanted to comment. Nikki, is there any additional that we should say or in terms of the process? Okay. Thank you.
Do you have more questions,
I do.
Councilwoman Hiller? Can you kind of quickly run through them?
Sure. On the infill sidewalks, my question was, I certainly support adding sidewalks. I wondered if consideration had been given to any other strategies for funding other than bonding.
Councilwoman Hiller, are you speaking of it was formerly infill sidewalks and now we call it the pedestrian master plan?
Yes.
Okay. I would say for this immediate CIP, it was determined that at the level it's at, $500,000, that it would have to be a bondable item at this time. So we didn't consider at this point alternate funding sources.
I don't know when it would be appropriate to, we've been talking about this for a while, and so for me, maybe using for the first 2 years of that, the leftovers from the countywide, the old countywide half-cent sales tax, which we'll get part of, and then just 1 year of a half-cent sales tax when our local tax ends would generate $13 million, and it would be, with no bonding expenses, 26 years at $500,000 a year, we could do a lot of sidewalks. And so those are some of the thoughts that I've had about getting this done, but not bonding. Similar question on municipal building renovations and the mechanical systems. I totally support fixing City Hall, but my question, we've been waiting for this for a long time. We have an application to be part of the historic district pending, which would make us eligible for historic tax credits for financing things like this rather than bonding. So my question was whether we had considered that alternate funding in the project and in the timing.
Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor and Councilmember Hillers. So we've had this conversation a lot, and when we bring a project forward, especially when we actually bring it forward for bonding, prior to doing so, we always take a look at what is the best plan possible. We're presenting this based on the best knowledge available, but we share your desire to bond less and use cash more, but at some point you have to make a decision as to what is the best plan at this particular moment. So Your questions are understood. It's probably much more represented than you would think in the conversations that we have pertaining to this. So we are always looking for ways to use cash, understanding that once you use cash, it's gone. So you try to find the right balance to do that.
Understood. Thank you. I really support the WEIR. That's the next one. And if people didn't see the detail, I think there's already a $500,000 federal grant moving along the line, which is very exciting to see it start. I had a question about the parking fund, which is on page 93. We have a group working on downtown parking right now. It's really good to me to see that the parking garage system upgrades are in there because people have felt those were critical for the success of downtown. And it's good to see the cash. My question about that was whether there was any consideration of stubbing in money for parking meter upgrades as well, as the staff discussed this.
We have looked at, Councilmember Heller, we have looked at upgrades to parking meters, and right now with the revenue, as we look forward, the revenue we're receiving right now in the parking meters themselves don't offset the costs for going to some of the electronic type meters at this time, so we actually, I think, would end up going backwards rather than forward at this time. We have tested some of those. Let me just emphasize on this, what this project is related with the garages, the credit card technology that's coming down the pike that we're going to have to upgrade because we don't want to put toll collectors back in our parking garages. And we are also working with IT that hopefully through this project we can actually do better than what we're seeing right now from this. But this is, you know, we're working with IT, et cetera, to see how we can upgrade. So
Will that include the digital readouts that people have been asking for then?
on the
garages?
Yes, this would upgrade
Awesome.
the garages that, you know, would give us more, an Ethernet-based system at the garages, yes.
That's great. I had another on the countywide, the upcoming countywide half-cent sales tax extension.
Is that pertaining to this CIP?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. As I realize that the projects are all tagged with the bold print that the exact years are not agreed yet and that they may change, and I know that we still have the negotiation of the interlocal pending, and I'm just keenly aware that our voters voted for streets and the zoo and bikeways in that, and we've got 11 streets to do in that project. And when you look, those are on page 96 to 100, and this project gets us started for the first few years with only, I think only 3 of them. And I would like to suggest that we, and I can bring something next week, but I think we need to start at least 1 street a year, which would back up the 12th Street and California ones, bring them a year sooner, and it would let us stub in at least another street. Huntoon is the next one that rolled up on the staff had prioritized to us before, but I just think for our plan and for our negotiation position with the county, that we need to have at least one street project a year. So I wanted to put that out there. And I'll be it for now. Thank you.
Is there any other comments or questions? We do have public comment, if I'm not seeing any from the council, so I'd ask Mr. Joseph Ledbetter.